What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time. Really looking forward to this one. Darude doesn't really need any introduction. Has only written the biggest dance record ever known to man, I think, to the level of people in stadiums hum this or shout this or whatever that is. He's achieved some amazing things over the years that anybody in the industry can only dream of achieving. Along with those achievements, there's been some massive ups and downs. So I wanted to kind of get him to talk about everything to do with the ups and downs and the future and everything in between. So without further ado, Darude, what is going on, man? How are you? Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. I am pretty okay, but, busy as always and all kinds of stuff happening. To be honest, I think it's actually a nice sort of breather having an hour to just sit down and do nothing but just talk. So thank you for doing this.
Man, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really interested in this podcast that we're going to have. I think also for the people listening, it's going to be really nice to actually get to know you as a human being a little bit more outside of the music side of things, which is why I love doing this. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on. Obviously we've met in person, but I don't really know you as a human being. So I'd love to dig deeper into it.
Have at it, man.
Let's go for it. Are you still based in Finland?
Yeah, I'm still based, or I should say, again based in Finland, but I've been back for 10 years. I lived in Atlanta in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Right north of Atlanta in Roswell, Georgia, for about 6 years. My wife's family is from that area, and well, it's a sad story. We went there to support my wife's dad with cancer stuff, and then we kind of stayed there for 6 years all of a sudden.
Wow. How did you find living in America from Finland to America?
Well, at that point, I'd been touring in America for I don't know, numerous years anyways, and so I was used to, it wasn't a culture shock, but definitely living in America gives, you a better perspective than to seeing the hotels and venues and party crowds. One thing that I do know that Atlanta was otherwise a nice place to be in, except the traffic is horrendous. And that's something I'm not missing. And curiously, the 6 years that I was actually living in Atlanta, or Roswell, but I don't think I played maybe like once or twice there. And since then, I played there several times. It was so weird. There's some scene politics and some other stuff that affected that, I guess. But and then the electronic dance music scene is very, or at least was then very based on only a couple of specific clubs, really. And then it was very much otherwise kind of hip hop and urban stuff. And then also at that point, towards the end of the time, because we've been back in 10 years, so it was getting kind of like sort of open format at that point. And then the EDM stuff started, sort of EDM boom started raising its head. So dance music came to Atlanta in a bigger way around that time as well.
Yeah, I think also like pre-COVID, Atlanta was becoming very interesting with dance music. And it feels, and I would happily be proven wrong, but it feels like post-COVID, it kind of has dropped off, and like the venues that were popping off pre-COVID is just like kind of fallen a wayside. In my opinion,
your opinion might be as valid as mine. I kind of don't know. There's been really like one or two promoters that I've worked with there, and post-COVID I think I have done a couple of gigs, but I haven't been present there, so
Yeah.
It's very tough to say. It's interesting because I'm not saying it hasn't had dance music. It definitely did. Like I went to a place called Opera, for instance, several times. I saw several of my my colleagues there, for instance, and there's been that sort of out of town, out of state, out of international scene. Them bringing DJs, but then it was quite interesting. Like house music and trance wise, it wasn't that prominent there at all.
Yeah, it's such a hip hop heavy city. Like
yeah, of course.
The history of hip hop is just on another level there, and it's kind of there's never really been a dance music history. Where's your strongest market on touring? Is it America?
It has to be America, yeah. I mean, not being big-headed, but I guess I could get gigs in Finland as many as I could or wanted. But then Finland is a small country, so if you have elsewhere to tour as well, you don't want to just only tour here. It's not a bad market at all, but it's just small.
Yeah.
And I would compare Finland very much to UK in the sense that there's a couple of big cities that are, where you would find the dance clubs and events. And then the rest of the country is sort of chain restaurant, nightclub kind of thing where you have the hotel attached to the venue. And we don't have the sound dB limits like UK in many parts has, though, which is unfortunate. But yeah, so in that way, we're like... Finns go out, at least 50% of the regular sort of small town bars probably have regulars and they go out anyways. And then, here's tonight's headliner. And then they go check that out in the main room. And it's rarely like full on 90% of the people are there for the main act, but it's just a gathering place and letting it loose.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think British dance culture has like evolved over the years. Obviously, it was massively pioneering in the 90s and still is today to a certain extent. But I think the clubs, I think I heard a stat that like since post-COVID, I think 45% of clubs in the UK have closed down.
Oh, wow.
And I think you then also, what's happened is like clubs have closed down, but massive venues have opened. Like obviously Printworks was around beforehand, but Printworks has closed down, which I've heard is coming back. But you have like drum sheds, warehouse project, and you have these huge venues like 15,000 cap, 10,000 cap, which is not really a nightclub in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's turned it into like a festival party, and these shows have to be over by 11 o'clock in the evening because of sound and things like that. It's definitely evolved over the years. Some good, some bad, I think.
I would see that like I absolutely am not like wanting to diss any place, but especially UK music scene, but it's changed in a way that it's not as significant for my chart following, for instance, anymore that it was. Like late 90s, early 2000s, like getting on a charts back then was the biggest thing that could have ever happened to me, because I would have followed the charts and I would have seen, and not even career-wise, just like for me mentally, and like I would have seen whoever there, and great dance music, trance and UK hard house and kind of the garage stuff and whatnot. And I think it's the same has happened to almost everywhere. Like it's just gone way more commercial, and the sort of cool club music making it on the charts is not that common anymore.
Yeah, I think like I've literally just Googled the like biggest dance hits of the noughties of 2000s, and it's like Toka's Miracle, like obviously Sandstorm, Satisfaction, and like that's the thing is nowadays I don't think it's, I think the ability to have records come from the underground and turn into radio hits was way more achievable then, because the underground was so big. But I think what's also happened now is that the underground has turned into the overground. So it's like it's which is kind of like, it's really strange because to see it now, and just being in ADE recently just gone, and kind of, I'm sure you see this as well, but like the ability to write more underground music and it be successful, and I mean successful with Spotify and TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all of this, and Apple Music, and it seems like producers now can like push the envelope a little bit more and have like a little more success on like a niche way, and like it, but does it ever turn into a smash hit? Not that often.
Yeah, true. I don't know, but then, yeah, you know, what is, you know, what is success today? Like there's now, back then it would have been, you know, chart position week #1 kind of thing. Or then if you get your stuff on MTV or the Vivas or whatever music channels of the world. And today, obviously there's just directly digital platform streaming numbers, but then the YouTubes, and then, say TikTok with you having nothing to do with other than somebody else using your track, and then the virality of that. And then it's interesting also because in some cases the virality that way doesn't really yield much. You're just known, but then it might not be very financially rewarding, or it might not be something that gets you gigs, or you might be somebody who made a track that goes bonkers viral, but then you're not a DJ or performer, so then there's no like further sort of career step there either. So it's very different today, though.
Yeah, and I think like I think we can sit here as older guys in the industry, right, and kind of complain about today, but I think there's also levels of like there's also the ability to go on the next level nowadays very quickly. Whereas before it was much harder. But I'd really like to get into it for anybody like that's listening that kind of is from the newer kind of part of the industry and kind of fresh into it. Like, how can you like explain to them of like how you could earn money on a business side of things when you started releasing in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s?
Wow. Well, that was kind of simple. If you were any sort of successful, like, I mean, the finances were basically royalties off of sold records, be that singles or albums, and then gigs. Obviously, probably sync stuff like movie soundtracks and whatnot existed as well, but it wasn't, at least in my case, as prominent then. But I never even dreamt of making money with my music. I was a hobbyist and I was just tinkering, and then all of a sudden stuff started happening. I gave a track to a guy, JS16, who then became my producer, and then within like 2 weeks, my first actual official release called Sandstorm was done as you hear it on a single. That was like, 25 years ago now. It was September.
Can I jump in?
September.
Can I jump in here? Sandstorm was your first ever record.
It was my first ever official release. I'd made music for a couple of years at that point. And I had put them on what was mp3.com, the original thing back then, which was a place similar to SoundCloud, I guess, but very much used by hobbyists. And they had like this pay for play kind of chart system that in the beginning was not manipulated, which it became at some point that. But so I had several tracks on those charts and kind of was like interacting with similar amateur artists, producers, got some email addresses and, or met up at a forum somewhere. But so Sandstorm was my official first release. And it is crazy because I'm not a typical example of, I was grinding years and years and then took these little steps and steps and steps, but I just kind of struck gold with the first one, and that's my fucking fault. Pardon me.
I think the thing I love this. I didn't know this, and this makes it even more interesting to me, because I think it's very easy to kind of complain about the current days and look at it as it wasn't as good as back then. However, you are literally the quintessential description of an overnight success in that way.
Yeah, I would say so, and I'm not sad about that. But it's an interesting thing because people ask me about what they should do and how they should build their career, and I'm like, well, I do have advice, be patient and grind and don't take the losses, don't count those, but count the little wins and all that stuff. But then somebody asked me, how did your stuff happen? Well, I didn't even think that I wanted to be a musician, and then all of a sudden I was. So it's kind of who am I to say? But at the same time, since the first peak, which on one hand you could think that it's just been downhill from there, a long 25-year downhill, but it's it enabled me. I always say that, if people think that I'm some sort of I have talents in music production and music writing, this and that, yeah, hopefully some. I've got a good ear, but at least half of my talent is that I've known to grab a hold on to what I was basically given, an opportunity to produce with a professional, and then with his and other connections I created right then and there, I started gigging. I'd never done a gig before, and I just threw myself in it. And literally the first 2 years or so, I took any and every gig. I played a freaking pizza place, in a corner, and I, signed autographs at HMV and whatever that is in any and every country, and I could get to. And then sort of after 2 or so years, I just started wondering what the hell's going on? It was so hectic, and I was so open to it, and now I had a chance, and I didn't know if it was going to be a week or a month or a year or 5 or 25. And that grinding was still there, even though I did get a crazy head start.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I think that's the thing, is it can also be the hardest, right? When you're grinding in it, and everyone kind of, I don't know, tell me if this is true, but it feels like sometimes everyone can expect you to know everything about the industry when you have that amount of success, but trying to...
Absolutely. Yes. And I know exactly what I do. When I'm here, I know my synths and however I want to use them. But even then, if you ask me about a synthesizer or how you should make this kind of sound, I might not know. I tinker. That's how I do my stuff. Then if somebody asks me an industry question or little details of publishing or whatever, I know everything as a big picture. But if you start grilling me about little details, then I'm weeping in a corner very soon, because I don't, and I have this very strong, it's not imposter syndrome, but that probably too here and there, but in general, it's not imposter syndrome, but I don't want to speak of stuff that I don't know. I don't want to get caught giving advice or opinions on something that I'm not studied.
Well, I think the power of saying I don't know is something that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to do. Yeah. And I think it actually takes somebody that's really confident in themselves to turn around and go, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that is, for a long time already, I have prevented this feeling of shame and stupidity and whatever, just with that. I'd rather say I don't know. If I can't find out myself, I can find somebody who does, and that's where I actually excel. I have a pretty good network of people who I can call, text, visit, and just ask those questions, and that is something, actually, one of my advice to people is like, don't try to front with stuff that you actually can't back up.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think at the end of the day, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how much success anyone's had, there's stuff that we don't know, and we've got to learn. We've all got to learn.
Yeah. But sorry, I wanted to say, go back to like the earning stuff. That was an interesting thing because I kept my day job, or my part-time day job, for a while, and then but then it was quite simple. Like, you made some copyright money from airplay. My track actually started to play quite well on radio, so I got some of that, and then it sold pretty decently the first year or two. But then after that, it becomes sort of you basically take turns. You play catch up with touring.
Yeah.
Then you release a new record, or a single, or album, or both, leading to an album, and then there's always a peak. You tour a little more, and then you release another thing. And I think today, with all the digital opportunities, and what sort of the digital world has created so many opportunities and different things where music is needed, a lot of people who are asking about careers, they don't understand that you don't have to be a superstar DJ or producer or performer to make money in an electronic dance music field, for instance, if that's your passion. And there's a lot to just having those skills in the studio, and you don't ever need to be on a stage if you don't want to, or if you don't get to, you can still make a living out of all kinds of stuff.
I think that's the really amazing thing about nowadays, is that, and I've said this, I sound like a broken record, but we live in this world now where there's artists that can release music and earn a very good living just by releasing music. We have artists that release music that doesn't earn a living from releasing the music, but they earn a living from touring. And then we have other artists that make videos, make content, that earn a very good living just by doing that aren't playing live, and that aren't really releasing music. And I think it's like it's the one time, and then there's some people that can do all three, right? And then some people that can do two, and vice versa. And I think that's such a freeing part of the industry now, and part of the world, not just music. This is in every way of life.
Yeah.
And I think go on.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, and I think it's that back in the day, without sounding old, like there was only realistically two ways to have to be successful as an artist, and it was release music and tour. And now it's just worlds apart.
Yeah, I think also a key thing to understand and to handle yourself, I think, which I learned during the pandemic, because I'd had this thought that I'd have some sort of an idea of retirement one day, but it actually turned out I really didn't. I didn't have like an actual executable plan B. And now I have a better idea of that, because that forced me to think about it. But what my point is here, that it's actually an interesting thing, the side hustles and all of that you can do. It's also very difficult if you have been an artist, say, a DJ performer on stage for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then if you start thinking, well, I have these other skills, but how do you apply them? Like, what's your job application? Who's going to hire you, or what kind of company are you going to start? And so that presented for me to be quite a big challenge, because everything that I've done has sort of, professionally, musically, has been like going around the Darude brand, my name, my track Sandstorm, of course. And then if kind of that was taken out of the context of me working on something or applying for a job, that's also difficult or challenging. And then the other thing is, like, outside of these realities, like if you're gonna get those positions or get that kind of thing working, are you okay, or how quickly are you okay without your sort of status of an artist, but now you're working on something totally different?
I want to dig deep. I want to dig deeper into that.
Yeah, and so that's while, you know, both of us, we are on the same page. Like, there are so many different avenues, but then you also might have to realize that you have to give up on either ego or a dream of something to, you know, to be your own star, or whatever you want to call that, to work in an industry and make a good living, but not actually be in a spotlight. So there's that as well.
So what is your plan B? What is that retirement plan for you?
Well, I don't, like I said, I don't have an actual full-on actionable retirement plan right now, but I am slowly but surely with my better half building that. So we've started a label that's right now. We've released my latest album together, my 5th album on the label, and we want to expand that, just release other people's music and sort of the sort of romantic notion, what the kind of music we want, and also with the people we want to support, talent we find are worthy and great human beings and whatnot. And while that in itself is definitely not a guaranteed moneymaker, but something like that, fading, doing maybe 50% of my gigs per year, and maybe releasing a little less of my own music, but concentrating on the label side. And I know that's actually that's going to be challenging as well, because I've had a label before with my buddy Randy Boyer a good while ago, and while we loved running the label and we released a good bunch of music, but it was very hard running our DJ careers and that on the side. And from that experience, I know that there's when I decide to be more involved in that on the backside of it, behind the scenes, then I'll also need to probably kind of decide to take little less gigs and little less other responsibilities on the actual Darude side.
Yeah, I think there's a level, isn't there, when, okay, a lot of DJs have record labels, but there's DJs record labels and there's actual record labels.
Yeah.
And I think there's the difference between, okay, I'm signing to this record label because it's a DJ and I want the association of being with that DJ. But also then there's the other side of, I'm signing to a record label because they have a great team of staff. And they provide a great service that my record is going to become successful or potentially become successful. Yep. And that's when there's two. I think, although I try not to go into anything with expectations in life or in this industry, I think when you're signing to a DJ's label, you're almost expecting that the bigger DJ that owns that label to go, here's a platform, like we can now put you on, which I think is actually falling off nowadays. And also on the other side of things, on the actual like quintessential record label, I think there's an expectation of okay, this team needs to make this record be reasonably successful, hopefully, fingers crossed. I think there's two things. I also think that side of the industry is kind of failing off a little bit as well. So I'd like to get your take on what, in your way, what does a successful record label provide for an artist in 2024?
Well, that I should be able to answer that, right? Because I'm doing that myself. I think one of the things that what we want to do is, or we want to provide people not false expectations, which doesn't mean small expectations, but we don't want to promise the heaven and the earth, and we also are going to provide them with very transparent and very easily readable contracts, because I've been in weird and complex contracts and I've suffered from that. And I also want to be somebody who doesn't, or our label doesn't want to tie anybody down, which I'm also been a victim of, if that might be a harsh word, but still. So that's the starting point. And like I already said earlier, we're kind of, I don't have illusions of or utopian, views on it, but I want to start from that, because that's something that is near and dear to me. Like, and I hope that people will find a good home on our label, and even if they go on bigger and better things later, they'll remember us fondly, and we all benefit out of that. Like you said, a good team, whatever that means these days, knowing your distributors, knowing your publishing partners, potentially knowing your sync, like from the get-go, like not just release music to be streamed on Spotify or whatever platform, but kind of know what's out there for the kind of music that you want to sign. I'm not a gamer myself, but I have quite sort of close connections to gaming world through Sandstorm and the memification of it and all that stuff. And I've been in close contact with, for instance, Twitch and then several gaming companies. And that's something that I also kind of want to, hopefully can leverage in the future. And but it's like I said earlier, it's a really tough thing, that as well. Like starting a label, I want to be able to sort of keep my word and do something with the music that I sign. So my sort of perfectionist comes in between here and there. So whether I'll I hear a good track and then I'm thinking I want to release this, but then if I just hear a track that I want to DJ and I know it's going to destroy on a dance floor, but does it have hit potential, or do we have enough juice to make it a hit? There's a difference there. So then I balance with that as well. And then if I release somebody's record and it doesn't, crush, then is it, am I supposed to feel guilty, or it just didn't work this time? And like there's a lot of these emotions in it as well that they are definitely a factor for me.
I think it's really hard, because I think also like record labels have, it's really hard, especially nowadays, because record labels don't really have any power in nowadays, and I think we've all worked this out, right? Even record labels have worked this out, and I think there's this really interesting relationship between record label and artist nowadays, which I think is actually giving the power back to the label, but giving the power back to the artist, which I actually really, really like. And it feels like there's so much conversation going on with artists talking about this. And I think it is time for labels to kind of be on a even playing field. And I think it's time for people to invest in both parties. I think it's down to the artist investing into the label and the label investing into the artist, and kind of going into it as a partnership rather than expectations. And I think that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, and the truth is that anybody can get their music to the digital platforms today if they want to, without any label, any kind of party in between. So obviously as a label, you also need to have some sort of proof in the pudding that it's worth the artist, DJ, producer, whoever is signing their stuff to your label, that percentage that we take from in the middle is worth it. And I think that we have some of that definitely with my rather long career now already, and the connections I've made, and also the experience. And I've seen a couple of pitfalls along the way as well.
Totally.
So that's kind of I don't know, this is a long winding label pitch, I guess, but that's what we are sort of building right now. And like I said, it's been interesting. We've released my album on it so far, and I mean, we've gone through a bunch of demos, bunch of very close calls to release stuff, but that's still up and coming, and it'll be interesting. And also, like, you know, the whole thing of there's the dance label of today, and there's some of them, a couple of them are really big, and they are like can be considered majors. They still treat usually people a little different, or the contracts are different from, say, if you sign with an actual major, and those usually, if you're at least directly on the major label, they are on a sort of pop or whatever superstardom tip anyways. So it's an interesting thing for an up and comer, especially, to navigate. And I think, and I hope that people knowing my name from the dance music industry would at least give our sort of pitch or our label a little quick look, because we can, I think we can offer like a soft entry and a sort of fair one to
I totally
the industry.
agree. I think we've all been doing it long enough to kind of teach and educate the younger people in this industry that are coming through on what is right and what's wrong, and what's fair. Do you own the rights to Sandstorm?
Well, Sandstorm is published, so I have a publishing deal with Universal, which in a way is unfortunate. I would love to say I own all the rights to it, but they've been really great for me publishing wise. They are looking after my numbers, and they are active with the pitches. So that's been working really great. I have nothing but good stuff to say about them. And and then there's a new Sandstorm master that I own.
Who owns the original master?
The original master is owned by 16 Inch Records, the label that I released with back then.
And is that forever?
Yes.
That's crazy.
One of those fun things about music industry.
Yeah.
But I do, you know, I don't hate them for that. I don't hate them for that. In fact, I'm eternally thankful for JS16 Jaakko, who helped me like literally get from a hobbyist to releasing artists who actually, with the first album, I wasn't really ready to professionally mix something, even produce. Barely knew what a DJ mix was or extended mix. And so I got my beginnings with them, and like when it comes to the contract, if they wanted to, they could have maybe agreed to adjust the contract along the way, but that hasn't happened. But that was very much a standard back then, and in that way, you know, that hasn't affected our friendship or anything like that. So that side is that's kind of like the business of it. I don't think anybody at that point was like, hey, we're gonna make him sign this kind of deal. But like you're, I guess, referring to, like today, the deals are quite different at times, and people are much wiser, I would say, and they know to put whatever year limits and stuff in the contracts these days, which obviously, for instance, my kind of case would have been smart at some point.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think you hear this over and over again. And I like classic example. I had MK on the podcast, and his Nightcrawlers remix was just a remix, so he got no royalties, no publishing, like a small fee, and it was still one of the biggest dance records ever. He'd be, although he's extremely successful, he'd be a multi-millionaire over and over again, just from that record. So it's definitely, and I think this is why I love having these conversations, because I think it is true education for people nowadays. And
Yeah.
And I don't think realistically you would have known Sandstorm would have done what it's done. Like, none of us know, right? Signing a contract, none of us know. But I think it's also, it's like, it's understanding that, you know what, like, let's keep ourselves safe as artists, and let's look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and then, you know, not only is there sort of like the term is one thing, but then when you sign a contract in 99 or 2000, even still mid 2000s, streaming like Spotify was not even close yet, really. And when that started happening, my contract really is not favorable for like streaming. So, you know,
how does that work though? Because I think, like, there's been a lot of instances, I think, from, I don't quote me on this, I don't fully know if this is 100% true, but I think Fortet had this with Domino Records, where he actually fought it in court, where it was like pretty much exactly the same situation, where like his split was based on physical sales, not streaming sales. And it kind of, he won eventually. He ended up buying his whole catalog back. But I think, how does that affect you in this day and age?
Well, to be honest, I don't have my contract fully memorized in the back of my poor little head, and I don't know if I could do the same thing. But at the same time, I'm kind of past that now. Especially, I've moved to, especially now I've got the label that I'm releasing my own stuff through. And the old stuff, the back catalog is still there, and I can do something with it. And then my first two albums were released through 16-inch, and then there was a Helsinki music company, the third one, and then Warner, the fourth one. And I have a good relationship to basically all of them. So if I wanted to do something with all those old tracks, I can. And that's kind of, I don't know, that's kind of enough. I don't know if I want to stir anything, go to them with like my lawyer, like, hey, you know, we found this and that. I don't know, maybe I should, but it's not something I've really even thought about too much, because I more so want to just go forward and do my own thing now that I'm kind of in a place where I can.
I actually genuinely really respect that. I think there's sometimes a level of, you know what, it is what it is, and let's just move forward. And how do you move forward? At the end of the day, I want to dig in. Actually, I want to dig into Feel the Beat, because Feel the Beat was like, it was a part of my like childhood. Like I like obviously Sandstorm, we can talk about that, but like Feel the Beat was also a huge moment. How did that kind of come about for you? Was that after that was after Sandstorm?
Yeah. So Feel the Beat is it's an interesting thing for me, because JS is the initial writer of that track. And when we got together and started working on Sandstorm, one of those sessions, he was playing around the Feel the Beat vocal sample and similar bass arpeggio that is in Sandstorm, or we already had in Sandstorm. But then Jaakko is more like a house music guy. His background, his first album sounds very much like what Armand van Helden 97, 98 would have done, or something like that. Very sort of that funky and whatever housey stuff. And so he was like, well, I'm kind of not feeling this. And I was like, he was literally like about to delete the Atari Cubase sequence and toss the idea. I'm like, no. Hey, why don't you? So he bounced me. Actually, we recorded on that, like whatever he had with his, just a lead thing that wasn't the doo-doo-doo thing, but there was a lead thing, there was a vocal, there was a bass line. And then I took that home, split it in, the 3 or 4 tracks in Cubase, and started working on something around that. So we just worked on Sandstorm and but mind you, this is 99. This is analog mixer, couple of hardware samplers, a couple of hardware synths. So in practical ways, I mean, he never really changed his 909 kick setup, for instance. There was always the hi-hat was on one channel, and that was just the foundation of his, by the way, pretty damn kicking sound. It was very similar in his own, like the basic drum works and whatnot, and then mine. And so I worked around the idea for a little while. I came up with something, and then it was enough that we decided that it's going to be a Darude track as well. And it was funny when Feel the Beat was released a few months later after Sandstorm, and people were like, you guys just made a same sounding track to try and ride on the wave. And we're like, well, sure, whatever. It's because basically same synth, same setting, same everything in the studio. And then the only thing we actually did ride the wave, because Feel the Beat originally didn't have the do-do-do sound. But then we decided to go in a different way, like in a last bar of a round. And so that it was there. But otherwise, it sounding similar was just a practical matter of having the studio set up how it was. And Feel the Beat kept, I don't remember exactly when we got it done, but I mean, it kept waiting its release for several months, because Sandstorm's release, we signed, or 16-inch signed it to Neo in UK, I guess maybe January 2000, and it was released in June. And so I already was like losing hope.
Over it.
Yeah. And then, so then Feel the Beat later. So it was already such a known track for me. Obviously, I'd played it at gigs, and if people would listen to Sandstorm and Feel the Beat back to back, they are, first of all, different keys. They have different rhythm bass. They have different sort of song structure too. And one goes to like 103 BPM slowdown. They're actually very different musically, although production-wise, they're quite similar. But I can't take the full credit of other than telling Jaakko not to bin it when he was about to, and then sort of insisting making it my track. And again, I think that was, the composition of that track wasn't my sort of brainchild, but I somehow wanted to and knew how to cling to that record. And I'm so happy that I did, because it did really well chart-wise, and it was really a perfect continuation to Sandstorm, because it had a little bit of vocal too. Sandstorm being instrumental. So now we had maybe automatically a little more commercial hook to it as well. And well, it worked really well.
I've actually never thought about that Sandstorm is just completely instrumental. Like, I know that sounds really crazy to say, but like there's very, very, very few amount of records in this world that have been that successful that is pure instrumental.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
One of the cool things, I'll
Sorry,
jump here
I'm like
a little
mind
bit.
blown.
One of the cool things about that is that in most countries, people can do covers of tracks. Basically, I don't know what the license is called, but without asking a permission from the original creator or the rights owners. And so, anybody could do a Sandstorm remix or a cover. But most people today, what they want to do is they want to add a vocal to it, and that you can't do, because then it's an adaptation. And that's how we've been able to kind of protect it quite a bit, which we've actively done, because we do want to potentially work on something like that ourselves, but also I don't necessarily want 10,000 official versions of, well, official, but Sandstorm covers around. While there are many, and there are especially many bootlegs, but it's a thing. It's been a thing where we've protected it a lot. And then I think one of the things that people don't realize is somebody who's been like, well, it would be just great if you'd release all the bootlegs officially and whatnot. In a way, yes. And in a way, a lot of DJs have played them, and that's been kind of a nice thing. But us sort of preventing those being official releases has also protected the track, so that our sync stuff works still really well. We haven't watered down the whole thing. So any commercial, any movie, anything that Sandstorm is officially in goes through us, and if they want the track, they'll want the original, or they'll get the original.
Yeah.
And that way we can control where it goes, but that way also we can actually control a little bit of, or have been able to maintain the value of the track.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think that it's also not just the value, it's also the credibility. I think there's a lot of great records out there that have been bought, the rights have been bought, and the rights have not allowed the original artist to say yes or no. And you just get remakes on remakes on remakes, and it actually waters down the credibility of the original record. Like you said, DJs, producers are always going to do bootlegs, right? I love writing bootlegs, and I think there's a level of that which fans like, and also I think it keeps records alive for longer. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because obviously we're in the TikTok age, we're in the Instagram age, we're in social media age, everyone's got camera phones and all of that. I'd like to get your take. There's a lot of people playing Sandstorm again, right? It seems to, in my opinion, I'm seeing it way more on the spectrum of like it's back to a certain extent. Trance is becoming bigger again. You've got DJs like Ben Hemsley, Hannah Lang that are like massive artists again, and they're playing trance. What's your thoughts on people playing it again and remaking it and doing all that? And I'm not saying people stopped because it's one of the biggest hits, but
well, so there's actually probably a misconception if people have been seeing me comment or have been interested in that. I don't hate people making bootlegs of Sandstorm. Some people, I think that I do. What I do hate, or hate is maybe, I don't want to use that much of energy. I don't hate that. But what I do dislike is when people use my stuff, or anybody's really, a big record, and then go like the lowest common denominator and lowest effort, just slap a beat to something, and then start promoting yourself like crazy with it, like buy promo campaigns and do all kinds of stuff, like without so much of a nod or asking for permission or thoughts, whatever. And on top of that, over time, I've actually like privately called a couple of people out, or just nicely gone like, hey, so I saw your campaign, like it's kind of maybe not kosher to me what you're doing. And there's been like, you old fart, like I'm doing you a favor, like GTFO. I'm like, not everybody is like that. So that sours my mind a little bit maybe. But again, like, DJ culture has always had sampling and bootlegs and mashups and everything. Those are all fine. I do that all the time myself. Every time I find like a cool track combo that melodies fit together, or this one's a cappella fits with that one, I either do it live, or I might even do a studio production of it. I play it in my sets. You've never seen me advertise myself with somebody else's piece of music like that, because I don't think it's my place to do. Then I've had a couple of instances where those people have actually seen a clip from my show or something, and like, hey, did you do that, or is it somebody else's? And they like it. So then I can actually hand it over, and I usually don't even hand over my mashups or bootlegs to anybody else other than my 5 or some close friends who I know that won't share it, because I don't think that's my place. And it's a gray area, because you can then say like, well, but I mean, you handed it over to those 5, like, what the hell, blah, blah, blah. Like, where's the, but I think I'm kind of just calling for the respect, maybe.
I get that. I think for me, in my opinion, I totally hear what you're saying. I have no issue with people making bootlegs and giving them out at all. Like I generally don't have an issue with that. People do it with my records. I do it with other people's records. I think the thing that I have an issue with is kind of what you said, is like trying to build your career based on somebody else's record. I think that the artists that give out bootlegs, the artists that play bootlegs, we all do it. Whether you give them out or not is a different situation, but I think giving them to fans is a way to just be like, okay, they ask for it, they're waiting for it in sets, right? It's just like a record, but I think there's also we if we have a successful career, we've based our career on great original records, and if you have done that, then I think you're good to go. But I think if you're trying to build it off somebody else's work, then we're on a different level.
And I think the whole thing is, I guess, that way too often I see, the mashups. You end up combining Swedish House Mafia and Deadmau5 and I don't know, Bon Jovi, and that's your mashup by DJ X, Y, and Z, and it's an automatic sort of, like, it's going to stream a little bit because you put those names, and then you associated those names to your name, or the other way around, and then you like actually buy advertisement and do stuff like that to campaign it. That's just a poor form, in my opinion. And again, it's hard thing for people to understand that I'm not against actually doing them and playing them, but then the using it to their gain, sometimes even financially directly, is just
it's a bit weird.
But again, I don't want to sound like an old grumpy man every time I talk about this. So like, come, if somebody's thinking about this, come to my show and check out how many classics remixed I play, or how many mashups I do here and there, and maybe you'll understand that I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing it in a different angle or from a different place, maybe. Then
totally. Your 25 years of Sandstorm. Sandstorm obviously is your record. You and JS16 wrote it. Is there ever a point when it's turned into something that it's not, you don't feel like it's part of you anymore, and where you feel like you've kind of moved on from that record?
I don't think I ever could move on from that record, in a sense that it really did kickstart my career. It really made everything then possible. And at one point, I don't know if this answers your question really, but at one point I did realize and decide that that's not going to be sort of the defining factor anymore, but it's going to be like, it's still a door opener, and I'm not ashamed of that, or I'm not sad about that. It's still something that even carries a good bit of our like my labels and like finances, because it does bring a good royalty check every year in various forms. But at one point I realized that was the starting point. That was the thing that put me somewhere. Now I just get to do what I want to do, and I don't mean that I could just be not doing anything financially. That not even close. But I get to now, while I've gained this platform, now I get to create new music, do other kind of stuff that I want, and every time Sandstorm pops up, which is sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, in some sort of social media thing, I mean, I'm happy about it usually. I've laughed my ass off of the freaking potato flute, this, and shower grill, like that, and anything. And I've gotten to do incredible things because of it, but also, like, I have this, like, if I sell a ticket in 24 because of Sandstorm, that just always gives me a chance to promote my latest album or how I perform when I'm live. And if that's their first time, I'm actually quite sure that if you do like Sandstorm as a piece of music and you came because of that, you're probably going to want to come see me next time as well, being the cocky me I am. But because what I do now is not that far from Sandstorm, but it also shows people when I get to do, an hour, 2-3 hour set, that's not the only thing I have. And like I said, there was kind of a revelation, but also like a decision at some point that I needed to make that is not what defines me. And also if people were to look back, you can also see that I've not leaned on the thing, at every turn, but it's like we've allowed and we've cherished the sort of new opportunities that sort of something, a new meme or anything else brought up. Of course, we're not like trying to hide from it, but then, and now you mentioned the 25 years, like I'm actually sort of battling this. Now we are going to do some celebrating next year.
Yeah.
It's nice round number, 2025 and 25 years, like basically outside of Finland or the Nordics of Sandstorm. But really for me, it's 25 years of Darude. And we're actually not sort of meaning to celebrate only Sandstorm, but the other tracks on the first album as well. And then basically just me doing my thing for 25 years. And it's quite emotional every once in a while, like waking up in an airplane, looking at the sunrise or sunset and thinking like, holy hell, somebody's still paying me to do this stuff. And then being in front of an audience, there's definitely a silent tear wiped from the corner every once in a while.
Well, I think that's the thing is in this industry, especially the electronic industry, well, all music industry. And I think you've seen it more than most, right? You've been in it 25 years next year. And you see people come and go, right? Mm-hmm. And you see extreme success and you see extreme failures and you see all of the good parts and all the bad parts. But I think the mad thing is you're 25 years on and still seeing it and kind of, there's not many people that can say that they've been doing it for 25 years successfully and it's remains successful. I've had like Danny Tenaglia on the podcast, and he's coming up to 50 years as a DJ. Like, it's unbelievable, right? But I think there's few and far between of artists that can say they've been in a very successful career for 25 years. Of course, you have ups and downs through that, but that's just life. And I mate, congratulations, because I think realistically, everybody. I don't know a single person that wouldn't want to say that they've been in the music industry for 25 years successfully. It's definitely an achievement. No matter, take away Sandstorm, right? It's still a huge success.
Well, thank you for that. But like I said, it's definitely like I've had these moments of, I'm stopping and actually thinking about stuff, and it is pretty crazy. And I still at times like stop and think like, when am I gonna actually really work, get a real job, or so like,
that doesn't ever go. That feeling doesn't ever go.
I don't think it ever goes like there, and it's not even like I'm not dissing myself or my career. It's just like, it's weird. Who gets to do this kind of thing for a living? And by the way, so like I appreciate, I'm going to compliment right back you, like your way of doing this podcast is really great. It seems people want to talk with you and tell details and like the good and juicy stuff, and like say Tenaglia one was really, really good. I've only had like one opportunity to meet him really quickly and just said hi, and he was very kind, but don't know the guy at all. Seemed him just talking about, like, I DJ with tractors, so him talking about him prepping his tractor playlist was just like, dude, that guy has been doing 25 more years than I have, but he's kind of doing the same thing. This just sounded so like, I was giggling probably out loud on a flight when I was listening to that. It was so funny.
Love that.
You've had the Mobies and whoever, and then obviously many more of my contemporaries. So it's been good, and I hope you're able to keep up with that, because it's also very important to have those stories, and then any up and comers sort of hearing it and potentially getting people in their sort of normal form, and not projecting or fronting as an artist or star. So they get sort of real stuff and real advice, or
I think,
real angles.
I totally agree, and I think for me it's the whole picture. I think in especially the day and age now is like, you go on YouTube and you go, all you see is like, make $1 million in your first year, right? Like you see this like real, like, and even I can get caught up in it, right? Even I can like 100% get caught up in that. And I think by having these conversations, it's selfishly, it's more to benefit me than anybody else. And if somebody else benefits from it, then great. And the reason why I benefit from it is because you and I would never have had this conversation ever. Like ever. Like, even if we were on the same lineup, right, we would still have never have had this conversation. And selfishly, I can sit back and go, I've had this conversation with you, and I've been able to build that relationship with you, and I'm pretty sure this relationship will carry on, and we can always pick up this conversation again when we see each other. And I think that's the thing for me, is like being able to allow people, in friends, family, peers in this industry, to have long form conversation, because we don't ever get to do it. The festival,
Hi, what's up? Yeah, where are you going next? That's like there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't feed you really much.
Yeah, I agree. And we all have friends in this industry, right? Like, I've got a couple of like very close friends, including my manager, where I can just pick up the phone and we can like have at it. But I think there's also a level of like allowing people in the industry, allowing people that want to be in the industry an ability to kind of listen to that. And I think it's so valuable. We live in a day and age where we can do that now. So yeah, man, it's great.
You mentioned sort of the social media and the bombardment of that kind of stuff. I wish all of us as well, who've been around for a while, but especially the up and comers, would not fall for the, get your first $1 million a year thing, but also just the regular FOMO that you have online. Like, it's just such an interesting thing where, like, nobody really lives like what everybody's socials look like. Nobody works like that. It's always the highlight reel of highlight reels, and it's tough. It's tough physically and mentally to be all on the grind all the time, and then project that sort of, I'm winning and I'm great and cool, and this is my happy place. And when sometimes it's really tough and it's not the happiest place. So I think I don't know. There's really no solution to that, but just hopefully people are aware that not everybody has always a great gig. For instance, not everything is always sold out. Not every time the front row is going mental, and we still sort of survive it and go just do the next one.
Yeah, and I think having conversations about it makes it feel a little bit normal for us as artists to understand that, like, your Darude that's written Sandstorm, literally the biggest, hands down, one of the biggest dance records ever in history, and you still have those struggles. And I think that's the important thing, right? Is like, even me coming to have this conversation with you, I can, obviously I've had a lot of these conversations, but I can also get into my own head of going, it's plain sailing for him. Of course it's not, right? We're all human. We all have those. And I think it's so important for people to be able to talk about them, and also people to hear them.
Yeah, I mean, just right before this nice little chat, I was ripping my hair out because of this pump is not pumping what I needed to pump.
I love that.
Yeah, man.
I love that, dude. Thank you so much for what you've done in the industry. Thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Dude,
Really appreciate it.
After all the episodes I watched, I'm so familiar with your voice. You're like an old friend. So this was great. I don't know if you do second rounds with people, but I'll do it in a heartbeat with you, man. So
I'd love to, man. I'd love to. Let's pick this up in a year or two when we're a bit older and wiser.
One more thing that I will need to spam and promo is there's a thing called Storm 25 and Storm25.world. That should be easy enough. Storm25.world. We are celebrating next year with a Darude tour, and I don't have too many sort of details, and I want to keep out now. But if you are somebody who wants to know among the firsts, Storm25.world, and there's an email sign up thing, and we'll let you know about the dates and other happenings. That's what my promo team told me to push down your throat right here.
You've done it. Joe's waiting in the background, making sure that you do that.
Yes.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on. Keep doing your thing, and I'm sure I'll bump into you at some point over.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Big love. Thank you. Peace.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Love that one. Big love to everybody that's listening. Thanks for Darude for coming on. Please give us a comment. Please share it with your friends. Do all of the above. And yeah, keep safe. Till next time, people.